We'd like to call this meeting of the County Commissioners to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if we could remain standing for just a moment, for a moment of silence, let's keep the family of Miss Betty Carroll in your prayers. She passed away on November the 23rd. She was a long-serving employee of the county for like 26 years, and she was currently a judge of orphans, one of the judges of orphans courts. Thank you. Thank you very much. As everyone knows, meeting announcements, time is allotted at the end of each of our meetings for the commissioners to receive comments from the public. And this morning we have a special guest with us, a special recognition for Mr. Bill Sutton, who probably needs no introduction. And we have prepared a certificate of appreciation. And Mr. Bill is leaving the Planning Commission. And I'd like to read this certificate of appreciation. It says, "This is to certify that William Sutton is hereby recognized for 29 years of exemplary service and dedication with the County Commissioners of Kent County. Mr. Sutton served as chair or vice chair for many years on the Planning Commission, and during his tenure assisted with 3 comprehensive plans and 2 comprehensive rezonings. In addition to the Planning Commission, Mr. Sutton served on the Bay Bridge Monitoring Committee and the Soil Conservation District Board, and helped the Planning Commission and Planning, Housing, and Zoning Department develop regulations for sediment and erosion control, nutrient management plans, and stormwater management. Mr. Sutton has always been a strong voice for agriculture, the environment, and good planning. Such commitment and devotion are admired and well respected by all those who have had the honor and privilege of working with Mr. Sutton throughout his many years of service. We, the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, thank you for your continued service, devotion, and dedication." Signed by the County Commissioners of Kent County, Maryland, Ronald H. Fithian, President, Albert H. Nickerson, Member, John F. Price, Member, and it was dated December the 12th, 2023. And they also left out one thing, which I know you served as a County Commissioner of Kent County, and I believe was from 1990 to 94, if I'm not mistaken. Well, and we want to wholeheartedly thank you for all your service, and proud to present you with a certificate of appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Quiet in here, right?
Should we somehow get a picture of him with his certificate and some of the...
Why don't the 3 of
Got
them
a lot of
walk
the board
around?
members that served with you are here. It'd be great to have maybe a group picture. We could figure, just turn him around and we could stand around and you can keep him from having to stand up.
Picture and stand.
Yeah.
I'm trying to stand up and turn around, 3 steps back. Okay.
Stand or sit.
Oh,
Yeah, you can stand.
absolutely.
You don't have to turn around.
Push up anyway.
Listen, before we get started with the picture, I should have asked, and I apologize. Joe Hickman's got a little something to read as well.
Yeah, I don't want to take up time, but
You take
Bill
your
Sutton
time.
wrote one of the more thoughtful letters anyone would receive in public service, and it says, "Dear Committee Chair Joe Hickman, thank you for the opportunity to represent Kent County citizens for over 30 years. My position on the Planning and Zoning Committee was very important to me, and it's been my honor to serve. I feel it is time to give the opportunity to someone else to serve. Strive to preserve the great agricultural land in Kent County. Sincerely, Bill Sutton. Thank you, Bill.
Very good.
How you want to gauge this picture here?
Why don't you just sit down?
I would say just
There you go.
have him sit right there.
Turn
and
around
This
back.
way.
You're right.
We got
There
you.
you
All right, now put your tail in there.
There you
Right,
go.
Slide back.
Look at that.
Here. There you go.
Get up there next to it. Get up there next to it. Get up there next to it. It says you have a lot of family here. Do you want a picture real quick?
Yeah, sure. Things are quiet right now.
Congratulations, Bill. Congratulations. Thank you for your service, Bill.
Real pleasure.
Get in there, Storm. You're grabbing by default. They probably don't want you, but they got you now. Kind of stuck
You got it, I don't want it.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. All right, you ready?
You want to say anything,
Thank
Dad?
you.
I don't want to say anything other than, it seems quiet in here this morning. We're used to doing surveillance one thing, that's how you get things done. If you don't have surveillance going through, somebody questioning what you do, it's not worth doing. Cut that straight. So, it's once in a lifetime thing, and, the commissioners who went out right ahead with me we went out, and I started a commissioner, and it's been going with myself 26 years. That's a long time. But you look at what Kent County looks like, what Kent County stands for, but for agriculture and other businesses also. It's been a pleasure to see things grow, and hope it stays in that growing mode. And that's what makes things happen. I'm saying, oh, now I guess time to go to work. And now my family, the son, it was, so you got to get off that board, so you would waste too much time. I said, we're not wasting time, we're just filling in, moving on. And I think that's where it should be. If it's not a little bit accurate, it's not working right. So that's all I can, I won't take time to ask questions. You might not want to hear some of that stuff. We've been through a lot of things, man. So I would just say thank you all for recognizing me, and I'll keep on going as long as I can on this earth, and I'll move up. So you guys have a great day.
Thanks.
And Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Nice. Got it.
Right.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Stay in touch.
Good stuff. You guys, every day's not bad, so keep at it.
Very nice. We have 4 consent items here, regular session minutes dated November 28, 2023, liquor minutes dated November 28, 2023, public hearing minutes dated November 28, 2023, and closed session minutes dated November 28, 2023. I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Got a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Our first appointment is John Schrottweiser, Director of Kent Cultural Alliance, and he's here for a letter of support.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Good morning to you all. Thank you. The letter that we have before you today is sort of a formality for the state of Maryland. It had come to the state's attention that some of the original designations of county arts councils around the state haven't been renewed in, well, probably close to 50 years now. And so as part of the state's sort of reorganizing of the work, they are looking for each of the counties to get first a letter of support from county commissioners, county leadership, which is what we're here for today. Next year, we'll come back and actually ask for a formal resolution. This was done apparently back in 1975 or 1976 when Vince Raymond founded the Arts Council. And all the letter is doing is putting your support behind us, the Kent Cultural Alliance, as the designated entity for Kent County through which we can receive funding from the Maryland State Arts Council. Our State Arts Council budget now is about $180,000 a year. A majority of that money is turned around and given out in the form of grants to organizations, community organizations, arts organizations, community organizations, and independent artists, as well as the Kent County Public Schools. So today we're asking for this letter of support that we can submit with our 2025 grant application, and then we'll come back in the new year and ask for the formal resolution.
I think we've already signed a letter, I think, and we're all in favor of it.
Certainly, absolutely.
Yeah, a motion would be good.
Okay, we can do that.
Just in case you haven't signed said letter yet.
Oh. Well, give it here, I'll sign it now.
Well, to make it official, let me entertain a motion. Here you go.
I'll make a motion that we agree to file the letter of support and sign same.
Got a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Great, gentlemen, thank
It's
you,
always a
appreciate
pleasure.
it. Sandra, Shelley, thank you for your help.
Next up, we have our Deputy Director of Public Works, Dan Matson. Dan, and he's here to talk about the new EMS station layout.
Yes, sir.
And we have Mr. Pete Landon with us,
And Logan Quinn.
Chief Quinn.
So at the most recent commissioners meeting, we had provided an update on the status of the design. Pete, Logan, and their team had provided me with what we called the minimum design criteria, basically the features, the specific types of rooms, and the square footage needed that would be needed to make a worthwhile new building. This was a change, as you recall, from the originally designed last year EMS building, as some of the offices that may have been considered or were planned for as part of a larger detention center renovation project needed to be located in the new building. So since that meeting, I developed a floor plan of to allocate space for the new building. I included that with the packet. I have several copies if you guys would like them.
I think we have it here in front of us.
Great. Basically, the building itself, it has a 4-bay vehicle garage, a pull-through configuration with basically 2 sets of double doors, one in the front, one in the back, 2 of those. It also has a large storage area with a 13-foot wide overhead door. And taking into consideration some of the feedback we'd had from commissioners, the intent is that should expansion be needed to the facility, that storage area could be converted to another vehicle storage bay, as well as some additional office space. So that was kind of the planning for the future element of the project we wanted to consider. The balance of the building is broken up into 2 bunk rooms, which would be large enough for a bed, a nightstand, a desk, and some closet space, a chief's office, kitchen, day room, full bathroom with separate toilet and shower rooms for just efficient use of space, and then a large hallway that would include laundry and a decontamination area as well that separates the vehicle bays from the living quarters of the building. So we, after going through a couple iterations of design and getting some feedback on the design from Logan and Pete, we are ready to move forward in solicitation of an architectural proposal for the work to begin the finer details of design and scoping out, ultimately moving towards a bid for this project. So today, we are seeking approval of the plan presented as a concept plan. There will be some refinement to it during architectural. Approval of this design and authorization to proceed in soliciting proposals from an architectural team to continue the project.
Very good. Any questions or comments?
I have some comments, maybe just some other things that we should maybe consider. I noticed that the current diagram, there's 1 bathroom with a shower and a toilet and a vanity area or whatever. We have both male and female paramedics. I would like to maybe see us consider at least having a female restroom and a male restroom, so we don't run into any problems down the road. The bunk rooms, I'm assuming one would be female, one would be male,
Typically, yes. They're single occupant rooms.
and in the bunk rooms, is it 2 bunks or just 1 bunk? or-
So currently, we do 1 bunk per room. Previously, when I was here as just a paramedic, in the Lynch office, we did have bunk beds that were stacked. And those were primarily used for just bedding storage, or when we had snowstorms, hurricanes, and we were upstaffing, it gave enough room for more people to be in the facility. So that is an option if we wanted to go that route.
Well, you guys are the experts when you come to the 24-hour operation, living there and
Yeah.
being housed there. So if you think it's necessary to have several bunks, then that's fine, but you can also bring out a cot, I guess,
Yeah, yep.
or something if we have an emergency. When I looked at the office space for the chief, I think it was 16 by 8.
Yes, correct.
Wouldn't it be better to maybe think about 12 by 10? And I say that because that's what the other rooms, where the utility or mechanical room is going to be, and there's another room back there too, I can't remember. what it is.
Both bunk rooms and the utility room each are 12 by 10, yes.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that, and maybe make the kitchen maybe a little larger. And again, these are just ideas to think about. And one other thing I think that you should maybe consider is on the storage area where we have the 13-foot door,
Yes.
maybe put a door on the side that you can just walk in instead of putting the door up and down all the time.
Sure, yes.
Probably haven't really gotten this far with the project yet, but because of what you all carry in those vehicles, medications and so forth, you probably should think about a security system of some sort too.
Yes.
That could be tied into the EOC or when they're not there. Oh, and talking about security, I was thinking that where you have the day room, and there's 2 double doors there. I was thinking there should be, maybe some, consideration given to a small, very small lobby that you have to be let in, as opposed to just walking in to the day room, which would actually, restrict the public's access to the building.
Certainly, the initial design approach for this was to, with a keen eye on limiting square footage. And we can certainly look to incorporate these. It'll add a little bit more square footage, but we're not talking,
It's
orders of
not much.
magnitude more.
It's not
Yes.
much. And maybe this is a question for Director Landon. Is the county currently, or maybe Logan, is the county currently billing for EMS services?
No.
Do we have intentions on doing that?
I can answer that. Yes, we do. We're in discussion with the Emergency Services Board as well as the fire chiefs and the EMS Council to resurrect or return to a working model for billing. When that evolves using all the stakeholders, we'll bring it before the commissioners for consideration, because it would bring some money back into the county. My preference would be for it to somehow be earmarked for emergency services or EMS, but we could discuss that in the future.
Well, I think it makes perfect sense, and I think the county used to do this
They did.
a few years back.
Yes, we did.
And somehow or another, we got away from it, probably because of staffing, but,
We had a building
Yes.
coordinator, as I remember. at
Yes.
one
Yeah,
time.
it was Ethel Duhamel when she
it
retired.
it does generate revenue, and it generates revenue through, most people don't understand that if you need EMS and they come, everyone's got insurance, and the insurance companies get billed, not the, patients, so we're not burdening our local citizens. But the insurance companies will write you a check. And I know the rescue squad does that, and they're very, very successful with the revenue source. So I think it would be a good thing to do.
If I'm not mistaken, at least from my memory, if people don't have insurance, we don't bill them.
We don't go after them.
Yeah, so we can, it's totally adaptable about how you want to do it. If no insurance, or if they have Medicaid, Medicare, that's covered. And then you can even dial it down to, for instance, if a county employee called 911 and they're transported by Kent EMS, like that would be your option to say, do we bill the county employee? Do we let the insurance handle it? Stuff like that. So the rules are flexible, and it can be handled with the billing coordinator, and then that person gets to choose, if they send it out for billing or not, really. But for the most part, yes, insurances nowadays will cover EMS services, at least a portion of it. And then it's, totally up to us or you guys if we want to go bill them for that other portion or not. I know Queen Anne's County, I believe they do bill after insurance, but it's not aggressive billing. So there's not going to collections. We're not knocking on their door, asking for money.
So if this is going to be something that's going to be coming down the road, would it make sense to have a small workstation or area at this station
Yeah, yep,
for whoever's going to be handling this
yeah,
to work out of?
absolutely.
Yeah, I think Dan was correct in saying we tried to minimize the
Oh, I understand.
square footage.
He was doing exactly what he was asked to do.
Dan's had his fingers smacked enough by somebody.
So you're here today to ask for our blessing on an architect to,
I got a couple.
To seek proposal from an architect. We do not yet have a proposal.
okay, go ahead.
I just want to, what is the pitch? I'm looking at this storage area that will, in all likelihood, become another bay at some point in time. What is the pitch on the roof? Do you know? Do you have that in any idea?
I don't know it offhand.
I mean, I know we're going out, this is planning on being at our safety complex now,
Yes.
correct? And those are more flat roofs, I guess. I'm assuming we're going to want to do.
Don't want to flat.
No more.
No, I wouldn't, no, I would not okay that, but, I guess my point is that if we, in the future, if we do this, storage area, and we need another bay, if we get the proper truss, we can take the storage area and put it upstairs. But that's just something, and it wouldn't cost a whole lot more money to do that now as opposed to maybe an addition. Be a little less expensive probably than an addition in the future. So just maybe, that would mean that the pitch of this roof is gonna have to be pretty substantial, 10, 12 or something like that, to give you the room for storage upstairs. Just something I think to think about for the future and save us money down the road. So.
The Caroline County Sheriff's Office had a storage room upstairs. When we toured it, we saw that, and it was nice.
Yeah, I visited the Caroline County EMS station, and interestingly enough, they, as well as Cecil County, discussed against having storage upstairs because you take it in the station, take it upstairs, store it, and every shift you have to bring it back downstairs. But I understand exactly what you're saying from
Gotcha.
expanding this down.
Okay, any other questions, or?
Well, I'm just, are we still looking at a pole barn for,
Pre-engineered metal building, yes, which would be for this type of use,
A
and
little politer way of putting it, that.
pre-engineered metal building? Okay, I'll remember that.
yes.
So it would seem to me, you pretty much know what your square footage you're gonna need.
Yes, sir.
Well, you just added some on to it, so we got.
Yeah, well, what I've added was just a few feet. So I'm thinking that, do we really need to hire an architect when there's plenty of vendors out there that can give you that shell? Now, and maybe this is off the wall, but the number that you've estimated at one of our meetings here a while back was $800,000 or $900,000. I think we can do it cheaper than that. I think we can contract with a reliable, what'd you call it?
Pre-engineered metal.
Pre-engineered metal building contractor.
Pole barn, John.
And, they have existing plans to meet our square footage. And I don't know whether there's anyone in the county, maybe even you could do it, Dan, I don't know, whether you have the ability or not, but have a contractor, even if we have to hire a contractor to oversee petitioning off everything, insulating, electric, plumbing, HVAC,
Insulation, yes.
and let them oversee the project as it, once the shell's up. I can't imagine that that's gonna cost $800,000 or $900,000. I might be wrong.
What kind of heat?
Albert, you have more experience with this than I do, but
What kind of heat are you putting in it? Have you thought about
To
it?
be honest, we're pretty much solely focused on the space
Layout.
allocation and the
No, I
layout for now,
understand.
yeah. Haven't
I
delved
didn't
into
mean
the
to
building
interrupt.
session.
No, well, I mean, it's a good point. I think that we should probably look into, I would, with the way that, the administrations that we have running the state and the country, we're pushing, I would almost say that we could put solar panels on top of this building, and I would try to do as much electric as we can do. I'm assuming that that's probably some grants out there for stuff like that. And I think that, to the sheriff's point, you open up the Lancaster Farmer, and there are 50 building manufacturers who say we can put up a 100 by 50 or 100 by 60 pole barn for X amount of dollars. And they all do have engineers on staff to help you through the permitting process. I don't know whether typically they are more ag buildings as opposed to a public building, but I would imagine that the staff would be good for that. I don't know whether or not we're able to solicit them as a government, can we go?
Well, we put out an RFP, everybody's welcome to bid.
Well, okay, so, but we can actually say, hey, could you bid this for us?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
We, yes, we can send
You
the
can have
RFP.
suppliers of labor materials that you know, and you can send the RFP to them if
Right.
there are certain vendors that you know provide these services.
Gotcha.
Right.
Right.
And we do have from the maintenance building at Wharton, a list of, there were 4 bidders in that project that could serve as a good starting point for better understanding, you know, how this fits with their standard models and if nothing else, recalibrating price as well.
Absolutely.
To ensure, so we can pursue that avenue before presenting an architectural proposal if one would be needed.
Yeah, look, can we, I mean, I'm all for trying that avenue first. What do you think?
Well, I think that it might be a more cost-effective way of
Absolutely.
proceeding forward.
Understood?
I mean, it might take a little more legwork, but if we could save $200,000 or $300,000, I think it's worth the extra legwork.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd rather put the money in the building, honestly. I mean, you know.
Okay.
And
We
if
know,
that- If that doesn't make sense to you, all say so. Dan, you're the,
I would need to have a more detailed conversation with the pole building manufacturers to then come back and determine what value an architect would provide over and above what they will. So I can't tell you right now that, yes, we can definitely do this without an architect, architectural team, engineer, electric design, all that stuff. I would need to get a better package from the manufacturers themselves to understand that.
what do you think about the idea of subcontracting the finished work on the inside? Cost savings or not?
Basically, the county functioning as the general contractor for the project. It would present some savings. I mean, when a general contractor contracts out that work, they will take overhead and profit on those. So there are some pass along fees. From my experience, having one general contractor's team can prevent certain coordination issues. It can be a little more efficient if it's all under one contractor who's using his preferred subs that do work together as a team on projects. That can be beneficial. But as you stated, this is not the most complicated building. If we're going with relatively standard design from them, it would certainly be possible and likely save money.
I don't want to speak for my two colleagues, but I think we're pretty much in agreement that we want to move forward with this as soon as possible. So by spring, we would like to see something probably started there and, get it operational as soon as we can, because right now, our EMS staff and thank you for what you've done out there to make it even better, but it's pretty, deplorable, working conditions.
And I can't take any credit. I will pass along that to our building maintenance staff, who's done a fantastic job.
Yeah, I commend them. They've done a great job, quick. I mean, everything's working great.
How's the water smell?
Still rough.
Working on that one.
Still smells like rotten eggs,
Still
doesn't it?
smells like rotten.
Albert said Lynch water's that way anyhow.
Lynch water's that way, man.
Dan, do you have, with the comments that's been made, you have an understanding of the changes that you clear with what few changes we wanted to make? And
Yes, sir.
I guess the idea is to allow Dan to move forward now to whatever the next step is, to bid this, however you bid this out, or get some ideas on on how we're gonna handle this, whether you're gonna be the general contractor or the county is, or however you're gonna do it. So we're moving forward to the next step, I assume.
Yeah, I will engage some of the reputable pre-engineered metal building contractors with our design as a basis, or a revised design incorporating the couple notes I got today, as a basis, get a better understanding of the total package that they could offer the county, which would be needed prior to actually bidding it out, to fully understand what we're asking them to do and what they're capable of doing. So I can certainly proceed with that, yes.
Well, there's certainly been some nice, very nice-looking buildings that are called pole buildings. Or better yet, your term, but they're pretty elaborate-looking buildings. They're very very attractive. I've seen a couple go up in the Rock Hall area recently. That one right there is coming into Rock Hall before we get to the firehouse. There's a huge building there that very attractive looking. All right. Any other questions, comments? But we're giving him the green light to move forward with the changes that's been discussed today, and you'll come back when you feel on that. You have some information for us.
Yes, sir.
And I guess the site is all, we pretty well know where the site's going to be for this. So.
Yes.
Is there a site plan that you need somebody to look at the elevation and
We would need a survey of the area, topographical survey of the area, to determine, exactly how the ground gets leveled out, and exactly stormwater areas as well. So that would be required.
Is that something, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dan, but is that something that maybe, knowing the approximate size of the building, is that something that we could maybe engage with, Ken Soil Water Conservation and start getting that ball rolling?
Absolutely, and I myself handled the stormwater reviews for the county,
Okay,
so I'm becoming more and more well-versed by the day in what should be required in terms
Okay.
of stormwater, but, yes, they would handle the soil conservation aspect of things, and ultimately, however this project comes together, a topographic survey would be needed, so I can obtain proposals for that work in the interim as well.
is that something that has to be bidded out, the survey? Or do we have a,
Depends on
Yeah,
the amount.
yeah, depends on the amount as to what level of bidding out we need to do.
I would anticipate the fee would be under the threshold for a public bid.
Formal
Yes.
sealed
You
bid.
could solicit quotes from interested suppliers rather than doing the formal RFP
Right.
bidding process.
For the survey, yes.
Yeah, that would save us some money because you don't incur the costs associated with advertising and everything.
well, I think arbitrary, we need to go ahead and move forward with doing that now, so that we're ready. Yeah.
And Dan, thanks for the work you put into it, and
Absolutely.
getting back to us so quick, and
Thank
working
you.
with Pete and Chief Quinn, and very good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pete, but I'm gonna jump around because you're up, but, how about, we'll take your 2023 State Homeland Security Grant Program.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So my office applied for and received the 2023 State Homeland Security Grant, and that's basically a grant to assist us with preventing, protecting against, mitigating, responding to, or recovering from acts of terrorism and other threats. And those threats could be winter storms, floods, stuff like that. What this grant provides us with is the resources that are required to implement the national preparedness system and working towards the national preparedness goal of a secure and resilient nation. In particular, we'll use this grant for Homeland Security projects at the Kent County Board of Elections, emergency management, planning activities, and portable radios used by first responders. Additionally, we applied for and received a grant for the 2023 Emergency Management Performance Grant, and that's one of the grants that allows a set of measures that are used for each county and jurisdiction to kind of, again, build towards the national preparedness roles. And what we use this for is, it's a matching fund grant where we develop a Homeland Security Enhancement and Emergency Management organization and structure. I won't say that these are routine grants, but we've received them several years in a row, and this is just kind of a repeat that's added to our operating expenses. The biggest change was adding the elections office, and they're going to put security cameras in there. That was earmarked by the federal government. A certain percentage of whatever our grant has received has to go towards providing security systems for election protection. So I would like to let you know that the State Homeland Security Grant that was awarded Kent County was for $98,413.63. And then the Emergency Management Performance Grant that was awarded was $67,660.78.
Very good.
So what I would actually ask or recommend is that you accept the grants and let me move forward with doing all the processing and paperwork for them, because it adds to our ability to protect Kent County much better.
Very good. Make a motion.
I feel so much safer now.
You're sleeping well at night, sir.
Well, let's maybe take them separately so there's no confusion here. I'd like to make a motion to accept the 2023 Department of Homeland Security State Homeland Security Grant Program awarded to Kent County in the amount of $98,413.63.
Got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it.
As soon as my computer comes up, there it is. I would also like to make another motion to accept the 2023 Department of Homeland Security Emergency Management Performance Grant awarded to Kent County in the matching amount of $67,660.78.
I got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. Pete, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Mr. President, the only thing I need is you have acceptance letters that have to be signed so I can process that. I believe they're part of your package.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Before we move on, Judge Murphy, did you have, I don't see you on the agenda, but I thought you, in the beginning, you were here for Mr. Sutton, which I'm sure you were, but I didn't know whether you.
Also, I was told to be on standby for a closed session, employee-related matter.
Okay, all righty. Scott, you're up. We have Mr. Scott Boone, he's the Director of Information Technology, Office of Statewide Broadband Home Stretch Grant Opportunity.
And it is how it reads. So this is to build off of current infrastructure. These are hard to build driveways, lengthy driveways. There are a number of obstacles that may make them cost prohibitive. We had one applicant. Now, for the two newer members, over the past 5 years now, I think we've had 4 different fiber applicants. We put this out for everybody's consumption. We had one applicant come back, and it doesn't speak ill of any of the other applicants that didn't put forward any ideas, because in some cases they may already be covered by grants that they're already a recipient of. Okay, so this particular applicant is one where they have infrastructure that does not have a lot of those conditions that are involved with, say, if you were a recipient of a grant, it may already include the driveways, okay? So this might be infrastructure that one of the providers has that was their investment that doesn't fall into the same guidelines as the grant applicants, okay? So for this particular one, we would end up being the applicant, but there is no financial investment by you. So there's normally a 25% match. The ISP is going to pick up that 25% match themselves. The state takes the rest if they're awarded the grant. So what we're here to ask you for is your permission to sign a letter of support for the grant for this particular provider, and to allow us, acting on behalf of the county, to be the financial pass-through as we've done in many of the past few years.
And this particular grant, I'm sorry, I probably missed it, and you probably explained it, would be used for what specific purpose?
Driveways.
Driveways.
For the most part, it's the cost prohibitive driveways off of
From the line to the house?
Correct.
I got you, the installation.
And again,
Those should be considered somewhat separate from other areas where there were grants that covered whole areas where those driveways were likely a part of. These are going to be areas where it's more likely going to be someone's current infrastructure that they have that they need to build off of. So it's kind of a separate bucket of money. I hope that came across correctly.
Let me just give a hypothetical. If somebody has a house sits back, a farmhouse sitting back, way back off the road, could apply for this to help
So
with the.
this is, this particular provider, it's in the hundreds of contact points. So this would be, I want to be very careful because this is proprietary information between the providers. But the answer to your question is likely the person you're referring to or the conceptual resident there has probably put an application in with one or more of these. They're likely on this list. And they would be covered, and I think it's up to $8,000 per driveway, if I remember correctly. So it should cover quite a bit of distance. So what we need, what we're requesting is a motion to approve Think Big Networks Homestretch grant proposal and agree to serve as a pass-through and applicant for the grant funds if awarded by the Office of Statewide Broadband.
So in essence, Scott, the money comes from the state, it goes to us, we send it to the internet service provider, so the customer doesn't have the excessive cost or the high cost of getting a internet line down their driveway to serve their house.
Correct, and
there's
again,
no cost to the county because we're
Correct.
just a conduit, because the state can't do the grant directly to the ISP. They have to do the grant to the county, and then the county distributes it to the ISP.
and as you've seen, very similar to the neighborhood grants that we've done in the past.
Right.
Almost identical to what you just described.
And this allows people that have a residence that doesn't abut or isn't close to where the lines go down the public road, they're able to get the service without incurring a substantial fee to run a lateral line down their driveway.
That's the theory.
And this would benefit all of our providers or
So we opened it up to everybody, and there was only one applicant. And again, I don't want to fault any of the other providers because they may have constraints based on other funding
I
that they've already
understand.
gotten.
No,
So there was interest, but another provider, for whatever reason, recognized maybe because of those limitations that this was not a good fit for them. And then another one did.
that's fine.
Okay.
Everybody had an opportunity.
Everybody had an opportunity. Yep, it was wide open statewide.
Any other questions?
No, you're good.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Think Big Networks Homestretch Grant Proposal and agree to serve as a pass-through and applicant for the grant funds if awarded by the Office of the Statewide Broadband.
Motion, I have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Before you go, I don't know whether we received, and this is probably more maybe Mike Molds, but I just wanted to make you aware of it. On behalf of the St. Clement's Episcopal Church up in Massey, they have a lot of Spanish-speaking individuals up there that they're trying to work with, and they're having an issue getting the internet underneath of the train track. And I know that that's not an easy thing to do because if my memory serves me, we've had an issue, and I forget what it was. We were trying to put something under a railroad track, and they're very careful in allowing that to happen. So maybe you could reach out to Mike Molds or someone, you know, if you're aware. Are you aware of the area that they're talking about?
I am aware, and actually I called, I believe it's Pastor Hanson,
Yes.
this morning at 8 o'clock and had a great conversation with him.
Good. Well, then
So I gave him the whole backstory on where we are, who the different players are, where the grant funding sources have come from, and what the timeline is. So I did say that we would likely talk about it today, and he was very appreciative. And I think he wanted to say thank you to Commissioner Nickerson there and for some of the work in the past, and I think you might have spoken with him as well.
After seeing the email yesterday, I called him last night.
Yes.
Unable to reach him, but I left him a message that we were going to
He was very
maybe look
appreciative.
into it.
Very
And
appreciative.
I run it, and I run into him in McDonald's.
And he actually, he said he worked with you or spoke with you on a previous issue in the Millington area, and he was appreciative for that as well.
Very good. Well, I don't remember what the issue was, whether it was internet or something else we were trying to run underneath a railroad track, and it wasn't the easiest thing to take care of.
It's not, there's
They're
some bureaucracy
very-
there.
Very cautious about allowing someone to bore underneath of a railroad track, but this is not a real, this seems to be a very small job of boring something for that cable.
Agreed.
I don't know.
The positive is that the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund grant, the RDOF grant, does fall, if not on them, very close to them. So there already is an allocated grant, there's already allocated grant funding available, but it's a more protracted timeline for that rollout than it would be for one of these shorter grants like the driveway or the neighborhood grants. So it's federal instead of state or local.
And that, I tell you, it was interesting that, when he was a customer in there eating, but he knew the people that worked there, and they were people that he was dealing with. And when he got talking to me about this issue, there were several in the kitchen and stuff that come to hear the conversation. They're interested in this issue. It's evidently very important to them.
And Commissioner Fithy, and for the other two of you, in the past, we have put forward infrastructure projects that because of the RDOF grant, they got blocked. So this area was one of the other providers that I mentioned. They did put an infrastructure grant request in to do this specific address and many of the areas around it in 21, 22, and 23, but each time they got blocked because there's also federal funding. So you can't, a lot of times the state doesn't look highly on double dipping. So the short answer is it's coming. It just depends on which provider and through which funding source.
I got you.
But I will stay in contact with them.
Very good, thank you.
Okay?
Yeah, they do a lot of good work up there.
They
for
do
a lot
very
of-
good work.
A lot of the people that run there.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
very good.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Next up, Ms. Bonnie Pearsall is Kent Alcohol and Tobacco Enforcement.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have two report outs. The first one's going to be the measures that were taken for an establishment for compliant issues. The letter was sent to the president that was on record. He was notified of the measures for this establishment to obtain compliance during unannounced inspections. The letter listed all aspects and expectations of an on-site inspection and further requested the full cooperation of staff moving forward. There's no action taken from the board. It was just a report out. The second one is we have a licensed establishment. When they renewed their license back in April, everybody has to report 6 months of their sales. They have to have at least 25% of food sales along with their liquor sales. They fell below the 25%, so we issued a letter with a verbal warning and put them on probation for 6 months. After their 6 months, they still fell under 2 months of the 6 months. So I'm requesting that to put them back on another 6 months probation to see if they can comply and do the 25% food sales.
Was there improvement during that, or was it essentially the same as the prior period, or could you notice some improvement?
There was some improvement. They just fell slightly under the 25% of the food sales, which is part of the Maryland Alcohol Beverage Annotated Code, so.
Licensee cooperative with you?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And I know we've given extensions like this in the past when people have a little trouble meeting that percentage of food versus alcohol.
And we're hoping that he's going to be making some changes coming up in the future, that this will help with his food sales for the 25%. So we're hoping with a 6 months extension that he can get to the full compliance of the 6 months, or from there on, further out.
We need to make a motion to allow that to happen, or, I mean, I don't know.
I'd like, because I don't know the answer, I'm going to ask a stupid question.
Okay.
The license that this person has, or this business has, was it the wrong type of license that he got, or?
This is what he wanted.
Yes, this is the license that he
I
wanted.
think the difference is, if you have a license that we would call tavern license, bar only, nobody under 21
That's correct.
can be in there at all, so a family can't come in there. Even if you're there with your parent, you can't come in. Whereas
Correct.
if you have a restaurant license, you can. I don't know why the licensee applied or didn't apply for this, but there is a difference, and there's also a difference in cost between the two licenses as well. I believe, is the tavern license still more expensive, or are they about the same?
No, the restaurant license.
It's more expensive, okay, because I knew there,
I believe he wanted like a family atmosphere and to be able for 21 and, under 21 to be able to visit the establishment. So I think that's where he's struggling a little bit. But
that's
I
the main
think,
difference between the two licenses, that the tavern license, doesn't matter if you have an adult or guardian parent with you,
You're not.
nobody under 21 can come in.
that's correct. And I think with what he's looking for in the future, which should be pretty close to happening, that he would be able to make the 25% sales, and then the license would make sense for his establishment.
So at the current time, this is the license that he wants.
Correct.
And he knows that he could ask for another license
Yes, he
that
was,
wouldn't allow anyone under
Yeah,
21.
I think
yes,
that's
he was
what
made aware of that,
We've
yes.
done that in the past, when we've had licenses where we've worked with them and we've given them extensions, and then the office here kind of forms an opinion that if they haven't been able to do it by now, they're not going to be able to do it. And then we say to them, look, you're going to need to get the other type of license. We have done that in the past. But usually that's occurred after we work with the licensee to see if they can get to where they want to be. But there does come a time where we have to say, look, we've tried it, we've extended it, it's not working, so you have to get the other license. And I can remember specifically where that's happened before in the past.
I can too.
I have no problem making a motion to approve the extension for this particular licensee to extend the probation period for an additional 6 months starting December 2023.
Have a motion, do I have a second? Second. Motion and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you, Ms. Bonnie.
Thank you.
Jim Miller, Human Resource Director. And staff.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We have a number of items for you today.
You do.
Yes, you do. Yeah. Well, we didn't want you all to get bored. The first one is a memorandum that I handed out earlier. Tom, I don't believe you got a copy of it.
Commissioner Nickerson just handed it to me.
Okay. This one is the recap on retiree health, excuse me, and the plans that we're recommending. Everything's detailed for you. We've been talking about it for some time, and we now feel that we've gotten to the point where we have a solid plan in place, if everyone agrees. Our plan is to move forward with inviting the retirees to a meeting next Tuesday at 3 p.m. here to go over the plan with them. Of course, any and all of you are invited to that meeting.
I'm sorry, when, next Tuesday?
Next Tuesday at 3
okay.
p.m. The commission, your standing meeting is at 6 p.m. next Tuesday. So we wanted this to get in, get dealt with, and give all the retirees an opportunity to understand where we're moving with the program, and we still intend for there to be, this thing won't move. We believe after conversation last Friday and yesterday afternoon with the third-party administrator that we can implement, they can create the document and implement the revised plan effective 1/1/24.
So I'm going to try to outline the plan that's been talked about and worked on for the last 6 months,
Yes.
almost 6 months. What we are trying to do here is to treat our retirees who are eligible for health care benefits consistently with the way our current county employees are treated. For instance, for our county employees, it's 90/10
For individual coverage.
for
yes.
individual coverage. Spouses are 85/15.
Employee and spouse are 85/15, and that's what we want to do for retiree and spouse, yes.
And that's the intent of this new proposal.
Yes.
We had to set up an HRA in order to reimburse the Medicare premiums and deductibles to the ones over the age of 65. And we have been able to do that, or Jim has, and his staff, which is all, I think, great things. Now, what's going to happen for those that might be listening, and I know that there are people listening to this meeting, we're inviting everyone in on December 19th, all the retirees, at 3 p.m. And we're going to put on a presentation and show everything that has transpired, full transparency of the entire thing. As of January 1, I got a call about this last night from a retiree who lives in New Hampshire. Not sure that he's going to be able to make the meeting, but he's going to try, and if not, he's going to call in. But he was wondering what happens to my Care First and Humana come January 1. And I explained to him that it's going to be 90/10. Just like the current employees, and that he will not have a lapse in coverage.
No.
And you're telling me that that's not going to happen. There's not, I mean, they're going to, January 1, everyone's going to have their Care First, and they're going to have Humana. And this third party is going to make sure that they receive the Medicare benefits up to 90%,
The reimbursement.
the reimbursement. So
Yep, that's the plan.
I think that's pretty clear. The one question I have, 'cause I really, Jim, I didn't have time to actually read this.
Yeah, I apologize
And
for that.
I
We were
don't
still
know whether
polishing
it's
it
in
this-
here or not.
At 7 o'clock this morning.
A retiree passes away,
Mm-hmm.
the spouse is still eligible
Yes,
to continue with their health care.
yes.
At the same percentage that they were.
Actually,
It's at the
the
same
way I
percentage the
viewed it as,
retiree.
if it was retiree and spouse, they were at 85/15. If the retiree passes away, the surviving spouse is going to move to an individual policy, and that reimbursement's at 90/10, is the way I'm seeing it. Because it would become an individual policy.
It'd be better, actually.
It's actually better. Of course, I mean, it's better financially that way, but they've lost their spouse, which,
Yeah, right.
you know.
Yeah.
But that's how I was envisioning it, that it would switch from the 85/15, because as opposed to being retiree plus spouse, it becomes the individual. But yes, it's written into the document here that that's the commissioner's intent for that to be able to, that surviving spouse to be able to continue her or his coverage.
And just for the record, at next Tuesday's meeting at 3 o'clock, the Finance Office is going to be able to issue the checks of any contributions that the county owes to the retirees at this point.
From July
To
through
clean up
12/31.
the
yes.
remainder of 2023.
Yep.
no-
That's also the plan, and Shelley and I have talked, Pat Shelley and I have talked, and that's the plan. We're hoping to, that's the goal, to be able to distribute those checks at the meeting on the 19th, to basically close the books on 2023, so that we can start 2024 fresh with the new plan.
And there are some retirees that owe us money as well, but we're gonna marry everything up, match it up. And
Good.
close out the books for calendar year 2023.
So it sounds like, I think we're there,
I think we are too.
and I'm very happy about that.
Yeah.
As we all are.
Yeah.
Is there any negative to this that will be pointed out by our retirees at 3 o'clock on next Tuesday?
The only thing that could come up on next Tuesday is that up until now, or at least prior to 2024, the reimbursement for Medicare expenses and deductible was at 100%. The problem with it, it was never permissible under regulations. It was never part of the motion that was approved by this body in 2007, and it was never in policy in 2017 to do that at all. So the fact that it's been going on all this time was counter to what the commissioners expressed their intent to be and what policy has stated. So there could be the question of, in 2022, 2023, I got my Medicare deductible and premiums at 100%, and now you're telling me it's going to be 90. Fact of the matter is, it was never supposed to have been reimbursed anyway. So the fact that we're going to be able to continue it into 2024 at 90/10 or 85/15 is still a benefit. We looked at at the general cost for the Medicare deductible and expenses, and going to 90/10 is, we've estimated about a $50 a month expense to the individual. But since it was never it shouldn't have happened to begin with, and administratively it just happened that way, what we're trying to do with this proposal is to clean everything up going into 2024 and keeping the retirees as, frankly, as whole as humanly possible. And in the case of the spouses, giving them a better reimbursement than they've ever had. That's the yin and yang of it.
So you're saying it's somewhat of a trade-off. They're getting a better policy, but it may cost a little more.
For the individual plus spouse, they're ahead of the game.
Ahead of the game.
For instance, to make it plain and simple, in my mind, is that
I'm not sure how you make anything
Well,
even with this plain and simple.
it took 6 months, but I think I got it. But,
You could sell that service if you actually got it now. Okay?
or I think I do, I don't know. But if we have a retiree and a spouse, right, under the old plan, the spouse was getting 40%,
60 was the reimbursement.
60 for the
Or
reimbursement.
55 if it was dental or vision.
Now they're going to get 85.
Right. Yes.
So it's a win-win if they have the spouse with the reimbursement. The other thing about this Medicare reimbursement is, this is really unheard of. And like Jim said, it wasn't the intent of the county to begin with to do that, although we're not going to take it away for the ones that were actually receiving it prior to July 1st, 2023. But what we have done is it will stop moving forward for anyone that retires after July 1st, 2023, because the county cannot afford to do that, but for long range.
Yeah, this mitigates some of the
So-
county's expense going forward. It lives up to, in my mind, it lives up to the letter and the intent of what the prior commissioners and this body have said they want to do.
So, yeah,
That's how we've constructed it.
we're still going to have health care available for our retirees at the same rate of county employees, current county employees. But there's not going to be any more Medicare reimbursements after July 1 of
Right.
last year, or
Well,
of this year, 2023.
Well, we're still going to be reimbursing for expenses because the HRA gives us permission to do that, but not at the rates that they were getting.
But not Medicare.
Could be Medicare, because the ones that are over 65, that's their default insurance.
Are you talking about Part D or?
Not the drug, no, I'm talking about B. Maybe I misunderstood the question. We never discussed eliminating reimbursement for health insurance for the 65 and over, because Medicare is their default. What we've changed is the reimbursement amount. Unless I misunderstood something. Because they're no longer, at that point, they're no longer eligible for Medigap. What they're eligible for is Medicare. And keeping them as whole as possible means that we're reimbursing for those expenses. We weren't permitted to do that previously without the HRA. The HRA, and actually there'll be 2 HRAs, gives us the authority to do that. And what I understood the intent was to continue health insurance for the retirees, but to correct the reimbursement amounts to be consistent with what active employees are doing.
Are you talking about the reimbursement for the premium that comes out of their Social Security check?
Yeah, yes, which effectively,
We're gonna continue to do that?
not at 100%. We're going to the reimbursement because we'll have that information and we will reimburse,
So-
we will receive that information. The third-party vendor will receive that information and reimburse back, and we've confirmed with the third party that they can do that, just as they can do it for Care First or Humana.
But why would we want to reimburse Medicare? I thought we wanted to get out of that business. Because it's going to be too costly.
Well, what we,
You mean for future retirees?
That's what we're talking about.
yeah, and and maybe
For
I'm
future
missing it.
retirees.
I'm sorry, this is on me, maybe I'm missing it. I thought the intent was still to provide reimbursement for health insurance for the retirees, regardless of whether or not it was Medicare or Care First.
The current retirees.
The current retirees.
That's
But
about people that
anybody-
retire in the future.
Right, anybody that retires from July 1st,
Right.
2023.
The retirees.
We're grandfathered.
And I think that's where I've gotten
Existing
lost in the
retirees.
conversation.
The retirees are still going to have the ability at 90%
Yeah,
on the county's part, 10% on their part,
yes,
for Care First and Humana.
And Part B.
and Part B. We didn't carve out Part B because that group of retirees, that is their default health insurance. And it actually is mandated, it comes out of their checks. We're reimbursing
Yeah, I
part
mean-
of that
I mean-
back.
I mean, they don't have any choice about it. It does come out. I found out.
Yeah, right. So we're reimbursing part of
but-
that back to them, but at 10 to 15% less than what they've been getting. So it does reduce the county's expense for it, but it still lives up to the intent of the retirees basically being helped with the cost of their health insurance.
When we've talked about this, the ones that we took it away from,
We haven't taken it away from
Well-
anybody currently. It's just future retirees.
Well, we stopped the reimbursement on July 1 on the
Yeah.
Medicare because
That's what I'm
we
talking
couldn't
about.
do that, right? Now we can,
Now we can.
now legally, we can.
right?
And I thought it was our intention to eliminate reimbursing Medicare cost premiums. I realize that, but I mean,
I thought the
That's
intent
pretty-
was to
that's pretty lucrative.
mitigate the county's expenses for those items. Well, to stop it because we weren't permitted to do it, but then once we found out we were allowed to do it, to move to mitigating the expense for it, but not to eliminate it entirely, that would mean that for retirees who are on Medicare, they would go from basically paying zero for their Medicare and health insurance to be paying 100% of it. And I didn't think that was the intent. I thought the intent was, once we could do it legally, was to move them from the county paying 100% to the county paying 90 or 85%. That's where I thought we had morphed to. And admittedly,
And
this has
this-
gone through a bunch of iterations over the last 6 months.
This
But that's
can be
where I thought
done
we got to.
any way you decide of those two options.
Yeah.
So
that's
it's
where I
just-
thought we had
I know that
gotten
I was
to.
under the same impression as Jim, is that we were trying to get them, the retirees reimbursement of the Part B. Right,
Well, make them as whole as possible.
Right.
That's where I thought we had morphed to, when we first learned we weren't supposed to do it, and then we found out there was a way to do it. And then it was mitigate the expense as best we could by making them consistent with active employees. That's where I got to in my 50th iteration of this thing.
Well, making them whole for the ones that were already retired prior to July 1st, 2023, was the ultimate goal.
And that's why we want to issue checks to them next week.
Because they were
for all-
promised something.
Yeah, and that's why we wanted to issue checks to them
The only thing
next
that we're
week for July
promising-
through December.
The only thing that we've agreed to promise future retirees of the county is that they will have health care benefits at the current rate of a county employee,
Right,
which is 90/10 currently.
right.
But reimbursing Medicare premiums, and I realize Medicare is your backup plan once you turn 65.
Yeah, that's the default. yeah.
That's pretty flashy.
Yes, and to your point earlier, it's unheard of that
It
we're
is
doing
unheard
it.
of. So I'm just wondering, why do we want to set ourselves up for that?
Well, I think because the intent of the commissioners in 2007, and then the policy
Well,
basically
the
in
intent
17.
was
The intent was never to cover Medicare at all.
That's right.
It was only to cover
So
Medigap. That was what was said in
Why are we going to move
2007.
forward
I
covering Medicare?
I think because we were continuing the practice that's been in place as opposed to a total cutoff on 1/1/24 of having the retirees who are on Medicare receiving no reimbursement for their Medicare expenses. Previously, they were getting 100% of it back. If we did what you were just describing, they would go from getting 100% to getting zero. I thought, I'm not going to say we, I'm going to take I thought that the ultimate intent, after we went through all the machinations, was to make them, with whatever health insurance they had, and I even wrote it this way, I didn't really care if they had Medicare or Care First or, pick Cigna or whoever, that the reimbursement would be the same as what we do with active employees. That's where I thought we got to.
that was my understanding as well. And just to clarify for anybody who's having trouble following the conversation, because we've been talking about this for 6 months, so some of these terms are very common to us. But what we're talking about is just the Medicare Part B, correct? That's the one that we're having a conversation about, whether or not we're going to reimburse.
It's like $168,
Yes,
$164 a month,
That's deducted from Social Security.
automatically mandated by law.
Right.
So,
You don't
We're
have to
talking
choose.
about reimbursing 90% or 85% of that as to,
That only happens.
as to what had been 100%,
I was with you.
or what could turn out to be 0%.
I was following you the whole time.
That's,
Do we have an idea how much the cost is going to be for this down the road?
well, down the road, we're not going to do it anymore. For any future
just for the ones
retirees.
that-
That's what I,
Yeah,
that's
for
what I
future
thought.
retirees, we're not doing it. It's
Yeah.
we're only doing it for the people that are currently,
Well, that's what
Right, we're
I've
considering
been
them
saying, and he's been
grandfathered.
saying.
no,
right.
well,
And we're saying two different things.
Yeah,
yeah,
we're
we are,
saying-
and I
yeah.
think that's where, and I think that's where I'm
Okay.
getting lost in translation on this thing. I didn't write this with the intent that if you have somebody who retires on
Today.
January 2nd, 2024, and they're 65 years of age, Medicare becomes their health insurance. It's no longer Cigna or whatever plan we have for the employees. I thought their reimbursement from the county was going to mirror active employees. But what I'm hearing is, at that point, we're going to say there is no reimbursement from the county for their Medicare Part B.
Part B in particular,
Okay.
right. Anybody
That-
who's retired.
Then that's a brain
Okay, so, yeah,
thing
so I
for
think,
me.
But the ones that are retired now,
The current group.
Oh, they're.
let's say somebody that retired 4 years
I
ago.
think that's
They're
where this
grandfathered
thing
in,
gets,
basically.
gets
that's
lost
fine.
for me.
Right,
And that's even the ones under the age of 65.
Right.
currently.
correct.
They're all grandfathered
When
in.
they turn 65,
They'll be eligible.
they'll get the reimbursement, but anybody that retired July 1st, 2023
That's
and
right.
on is not going to get the Part B reimbursement.
That was the intent of the county back in 2007, and that's been my intent.
Okay.
Because I don't think the
And
county
I'm
can-
sorry, I got lost in translation on the current, the future, the past.
There are too many different
And
categories.
the intent in 2007 was never to cover Medicare. It's not even in the language
I think
anywhere.
we gave more than what we intended, but
A
we're
lot,
not
yeah.
taking away what we already gave.
To somebody
But we're
who's
making
already
essentially a
retired.
correction to try to implement now
Yeah.
what we intended to implement back in
Right.
2007.
So all of our prior ones.
Will continue.
Will continue the way that it is.
Right.
Moving forward, if you keep me long enough.
That's fair enough
When I
for me.
retire, I
I-
will not get reimbursed.
That's a nice way to put it, Jen. Okay, that's on me. I'm sorry. I was, frankly, I was getting
so
lost
the-
in translation on this deal.
Does this change our progress so far?
No, I don't think it changes at all. It simply means that as we clean up the policy language, we clarify this point.
I thought it was in there already, but maybe it's not.
That's a
And I-
minor sentence, we're good.
Yeah, no, I
We'll
think
fix
we're
that this
fine.
afternoon.
I think it will clean up the language. I think it only has to state that going forward about the Medicare eligible 65 retirees, which means they have to have been 65. That's the de facto on it. But the current group of retirees, and I don't think we've had one or two since July, maybe one since July 1st anyway.
One.
We've had one since July 1st, and that person's not on the plan. So no harm, no foul to anybody who's retired since July 1st. And this is just to restate that any newer retiree, they don't get reimbursed for Medicare, Part B, and life goes on. The current group, and that's where it was getting crazy for me particularly, because we had the retirees at 65 plus, the retirees at under 65, the 60% reimbursement, the 55, the 100, and that's why Benetcon couldn't write the plan, because we had so many moving variables to this thing. But thank you, I appreciate it. Your language on it is way better than mine on this thing.
So one point of clarification is, and this brings up this point, is let's say somebody retired prior to July 1st, 2023, was not taking county benefits, was not in our county health plan, but they retired with 30 or more years with us, so they could have qualified for the county retiree health plan. What do we do with that category of person? So we're talking about somebody that retired prior to this fiscal year.
Right.
That qualified for the benefit, but did not take the county benefit. Can they then basically change their mind to be reimbursed by this new plan?
I'm not going to engage in this conversation because it might affect me. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, I think,
Do you know
and I
how
think
we're
that's
supposed to
exactly
move
the
this?
fair question. In
Are
my
you-
mind, I would say to you, in my opinion, that every retiree had the option to make that decision, and they made a decision to allow that group or members of that group to retroactively change their mind because they think there's a better deal to be had is inconsistent with what the intent of the commission had been.
Listen, I can, this is extremely complicated for me. And I hope we
for all of
never
us.
have to talk about any of this again, but I'll
Second
tell you
that.
what the intent was that, because I'm the one made it, when it was my idea to have this health care, for the rest of your life if you put in 30 years. And it was you would have the same plan as what you were carrying before you retired. If you never had any, if you didn't use our healthcare system, if you had your own, it didn't matter. It wasn't for you.
It
You
didn't
couldn't
involve you.
change that.
Right.
But if you had it and you were paying in on that plan all those years, or at least the last portion of them, then it did protect. Because it seemed like to me that the statement was you'll get the same health coverage for the rest of your life that you had when you worked for the county.
Right.
That's what it was. Now, we can change it if we need be, but that's what was said.
So if you
Back
had
in
somebody who
2007.
was not using your health care, they weren't part of the plan to have it continue under the county because they weren't using it to begin with. And to me, the analogy would be, I retired, I picked a different plan when I retired, but now because I think this might be a better deal to be had, now I want to drop that and pick this up and being reimbursed by the county. To me, that would be no different than an active employee making that same decision of switching back and forth. But active employees can only make that change either at open enrollment or if they have a life event that allows them to do that. It's different with retirees. Certainly can make the decision that you can allow people to come back to the county who've been gone from the county, but I think that's more complicated. I also think it adds an expense that we didn't anticipate.
Jim, I think we'd have to reach out to Benecon to even see if we could do it that way, like we would have to set up.
Well, we'd have to be able to see if we could, well, actually, it becomes even simpler, because if we're not going to permit, well, Jen's right, in a fashion. These folks could have been eligible for Medicare prior to 7/1/2023. For whatever reason, they chose not to take it. Now, we're into post 7/1/2023, and they think they can get a better deal, so they want to retroactively become part of this plan. Well, Jen's right. We don't know for a fact that Benecon can then add them into the group, the participating group, and be covered by the HRA because they weren't qualified when we created the plan. So that could be a question for them. But the fundamental question is, do we want to go back and allow people a chance to retroactively change their minds?
And I can tell you, we kind of dealt with this with a current employee not being on Medicare, took them off Medicare, put them in our plan, and now to get them back to Medicare. It took us almost 6 months to make that happen with Medicare. It's not an easy thing to happen.
And it took a special request to Medicare to do
Almost, to
it.
me, would be almost be like if we had a single person that retired, and then after he retired, he got married and he wanted to take out the family plan. I mean,
We wouldn't permit that because that
permit
was not, exactly.
And I remember the statement very clearly was that, at least my intention was, whatever policy you had when you worked here is what you were gonna have when you retire, as far as your health benefits. You couldn't add to, or.
Couldn't add to it.
You
right.
couldn't add to it.
Yeah.
If you had the family plan, then the family plan would carry over after you retired.
Right.
If you were a single person, you couldn't then, after you retired, get married and want to take the family plan. It didn't work that way.
It didn't work that way, exactly. So this situation, the question that's being raised now is, if I was eligible, but I left here, I was qualified, all that kind of good stuff, and I picked up insurance somewhere else, and then I decided that this was a better deal for me because a 90% reimbursement was better than what I picked, and I was only getting reimbursed at 50. Are we going to allow somebody to change their minds and come back to here? I'm saying I think allowing people to retroactively change their minds is complicated. It may be almost an impossibility. As Jen pointed out, it took 6 months to get one person moved, and we had to make a special request of Social Security even permit it to
The only
happen.
thing I can tell you is when that statement was made, that wasn't the intent. The intent was whatever you had when you worked here was what you were gonna have, the type of policy you were gonna have when you left. That's all I can say.
But it had to be that
If you
straight
let them-
line. You went from one to the next.
Yeah.
So if you went from here to something else, the intent wasn't for then to let you come back to here.
Jim, if somebody's allowed to change their election after retirement, doesn't that provide some budgetary concerns too?
Sure.
Because that's gonna increase the expense to the county, and it's gonna have a fiscal impact.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
On the
You're
county.
adding to the population.
I will be very interested when at 3 o'clock, when we unfold this to the retirees. I may not understand it completely. They will.
Sure.
And they'll know exactly whether they're gaining anything or whether they're being held harmless or whether it's gonna cost them something. I'll be interested to hear what they got to say.
And there's gonna be some of each in the room.
Yeah, there will be.
It's gonna be a mixed bag.
Yes,
There will be.
so,
But
I,
the
and then
question
we'll.
is, are we gonna, you know,
But on your
Are
question,
we
isn't
gonna-
it like whatever you elected on or before the time that you retired, that's what you're kind of held to, right? So if you're employed by the county and you have these benefits and you elect to retire with getting this, that's what you get. But if you're getting something better, and at the time of retirement, you're on another plan, and you don't take that decision's been made. You can't come back after the fact and say, oh, by the way, that coverage, they changed that coverage, I don't have it anymore, I want to take what you did. To me, that's difficult to budget for, and that's kind of highly unusual.
And that's exactly the
You're
point.
bound by that election you make by the time you retire.
and that's exactly the point. Are we gonna stick to that, or are we gonna say to people, yeah, if you go somewhere else and, yeah, the grass isn't greener on that
Right.
side, we'll let you come back and pick up ours, and the county ends up picking up that additional expense.
Look,
Right, we can't
Under
control what these
We
other
can't
plans
control
do.
that.
I think that also would.
with full disclosure here, the reason why this has come up, I'm a county retiree with 32 years of service. I had never, in the 32 years I worked for the county, used the county's health insurance. I was on my wife's insurance, and still am. Because, not necessarily because it's better, but it's more stabilized. Each year, we have to decide whether we're going to continue at 100%, 90-10, 85-15, whatever, during the budget process. If it's in my best interest to stay on her plan. And I'm fine with that. There probably will never be another case, but I do think it's important to have verbiage in our policy that says you have to be active at the time of retirement in the county plan. If you're not, and you did what I did, you're not eligible for any of those reimbursements or anything else.
I would also like to entertain a small conversation about, once you disenroll for any reason, can you come back? So a current retiree rolling, they do something else, are they allowed to come back?
I don't think that was the intent, I'm gonna tell you. I think it was whatever you had when you worked here, and then you retire, that's what you get.
And if you disenroll, then you're permanently disenrolled.
I don't know how you would keep track of it any other way.
I mean,
I do it either.
I think that's a very fair
I
policy.
think,
Yeah, if you're
And
an
you're right.
employee, if you're an active
You're right.
employee, you can
You're right
disenroll
about
and
the
re-enroll.
language
Right.
from when
But
this
once you
happened in
retire,
2007.
Right.
If you
I think
disenroll,
you
that's
get
it.
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of decisions you have to make in life when you go to retire.
Yeah.
And you're held to them. Some of us make mistakes sometimes, but, you know, you have to make those decisions. But whatever you got when you worked here, If you still had it when you retired, that's what you're gonna get after you retire. I don't know how to make it any simpler than that, really.
And once you if
So-
you were to disenroll, you may not re-enroll.
I don't,
Right, so
no,
we're not gonna let people
that would be the same
retroactively
as if you
change
didn't
that.
have it.
That just needs to be written into our policy.
So we're not going to let people retroactively change their minds
No,
from
no, no.
some
We're here
prior
to
period
deal
of
with
time.
what's in place.
We're going to deal with where you are the day you retire, and if you don't select then you don't come back later and make a different decision. We can't, you're right. I don't know how we would control that. I don't know how we would document it. I'm not even sure it's
I mean, when I
doable.
took my retirement, when I took my retirement, I had to decide,
Yeah.
I had to make decisions like, how much, my, you know, do I take full retirement? Or do I take less of a retirement? And then that we leave something for my wife if I go away from here before her? I mean, there are decisions you have to make when you go to retire.
Yep.
Once you make them, I'm stuck with that. That check that I get for my retirement from the town and the county together, what the retirement that I get, I decided how much of that retirement I was gonna get.
Yeah.
And if I die, my wife gets a bigger check, actually, because we've taken less now. That's a decision, I can't change that.
No. And I did the
And I
same
don't
thing.
think you-
I made the same
Never be
decision.
more dead than alive.
That's true.
Sorry,
You couldn't help yourself. So that, I think that's what it should be all across the board.
So if we're ready to accept the policy as discussed, we can implement with Benetcon.
I mean, we
HRA
can modify
plan.
the language to
I'm
clean
more
up
than
some of
happy
that,
to
but
move this thing
the
forward today.
fundamentally, I think we're all in the same spot.
You want a motion?
That would be fantastic.
I'll make a motion to move the retiree health care benefit proposal policy forward, effective as soon as we can make it effective.
Okay.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, the ayes have it. And we're moving this forward, and I will still be very interested to hear what our retirees have to say on
There,
the next Tuesday.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of conversation.
Well,
But I think what has been done here today is consistent with the intent, and it's consistent, and it'll be consistent across the board. And frankly, from my experience, it's still the best deal I've ever seen any retiree ever get. Next item. Yeah, would it be permissible to go a little bit out of order on this?
certainly.
We have, because we have a number of items, but today happens to also be payroll processing day. And as much as I'm going to get yelled at by 29 retirees next Tuesday, I'd like to not get yelled at by 250 active employees on Thursday that their payroll wasn't right. So I'd like to bring Rachel up. I'd like to move forward to the recruitment item titled part-time recycling attendant vacancy. It's probably 4 or 5 down on your list. Sandra, is that about right? About 4 or 5
Part-time
down?
recycling attendant?
I think it's
Okay.
environmental.
Public Works Environmental
Uh-huh.
Operations is the
Yes.
big title.
Rachel, this is Rachel Worth. You all have met her. Rachel was the recruiter for this particular vacancy, and as you know, my practice is to bring along the subject matter experts whenever we're doing recruitment. You have before you the information about the vacancy and how long it's been vacant, the information about the candidate, notes about the number of applicants that we had, and specific notes about why the candidate's being recommended to you. Today was the one that was being proposed by both the department and with Rachel's confirmation. So, any questions that Rachel can answer for you?
Can I make a suggestion here?
Yes, sir.
You're here to ask for approval of several positions which we've authorized.
Yes.
I've looked at each and every one of them. Don't have any issues personally.
I was thinking the
Why
same thing
don't,
you're
why don't we
thinking.
just make one motion to approve all of the
Unless Ronnie's
recommended
got-
candidates? But I don't know whether you
No,
have, you have,
I'm good if that's what you want.
but I think we can save a lot of time and people can get back to work and nobody gets messed up on their paychecks.
We could even save more time if we could revert back to a conversation we had back in probably April or May
No, we're not
regarding
No, we ain't
those.
going back yet.
But you told me I would be allowed to bring it forward at another time, Mr. President.
We're trying to save time.
Yeah, but this ain't the time.
This ain't the time. I'm good.
So there are 6 hiring actions in your
Yeah,
packet, so I
yeah,
would
you
just be
have-
very specific about the 6 positions that
Maybe
are.
we can just name the position and do one
Yeah,
motion to
that would be-
approve all
yes,
at.
That would be fine.
I would like to add, I promised you we would bring you the MEOs before the end of the year, and we will have the remaining.
Looks like you've done a good job of that.
Well, I can't take credit for that, Vinay did all the recruiting on the MEO roads.
Well, I-
They will all be filled, with the exception of 2.
The 2.
With the exception of 2,
Yeah,
by the end of this year.
that are gonna be filled
Because of the
at
applicants
this
that
point.
you
Right.
made.
But when we met last month and, or I guess it was last month, and this body agreed to the compensation structure we talked about, that enabled us to recruit and bring forth all these MEO candidates to you. So what you all did then is paying the dividends we hoped it would pay.
So
With that-
For purposes of the motion, name all the positions and then entertain one motion and then you're good to go.
I'd like to make a motion, after review of all the candidates that have been put up here today on the agenda. We have one for the detention center or correctional officer vacancy, one for a part-time recycling attendant vacancy at Public Works. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 for the Public Works Roads Division, MEO 2 vacancies.
There's 2 MEO 1s and 2 MEO 2s.
Right.
MEO 1s and MEO 2s. So that's my motion, and
He mentioned the part-time recycler. Yep.
My apologies.
Yep. Part-time recycler, correctional officer, 2 MEO 1s,
as long as
2
they
MEO
pass the
2s.
pre-employment drug testing and so forth.
Yes.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. The ayes have it.
That was fast.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Rachel.
Now,
Thanks, Funny.
I was getting ready to say, we still have this annual leave X.
We still have a couple more things for you, yes. The next one on the agenda and the list was compensatory leave buyback program. This is a program that's been in place for 6 or 7 years. It comes to the commissioners annually to give us the permission to send out a notice to all the employees, letting them know that the county is willing to buy back a portion of the compensatory time that they build up during the course of the
Is it
year.
up to 40 hours? Is that what it is?
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
And you have the notes, it's pretty straightforward. By way of history, last year at this time, there was 28 employees who sold back comp time to the county in the gross amount of about $28,000. If we're consistent, that'll be probably the expense for this year.
I can't imagine us not doing it.
We have some ideas for the future, but where we are today is with this program.
What'd you just say?
I said, we have some ideas for
Oh, okay.
future, but I can come to you at another meeting
These
to
are not
discuss that.
ideas, anything close to that retirement
No.
issue is.
Not even close.
I will go back into retirement personally, if that turns out to be the case.
No, I just want to make sure.
If you bring any more issues like that before us, we may help you go back.
I was gonna say, it may not be a voluntary situation. Yeah,
I don't
I
want
get
to, I don't want to be a stick in the mud, and at the same point, I hear what Ronnie is saying, but, and having folks that earned comp time at the sheriff's office and trying to cover shifts, I know it becomes a problem sometimes. Is that the reason why we're trying to do this? Because I have a hard time spending $28,000.
No, the history here
I mean,
is,
I mean, we're getting fully staffed here now, and
And maybe we won't have that much next time because we are fully staffed, but we've been we've been asking people to work overtime, and I assume that's the idea behind this policy is if you work all this overtime and you generate leave because of it, there comes a time, in the past, we've allowed them to sell back up to 40 hours.
Frankly, I wouldn't. I would pay people when they work.
Right, so these people are earning this comp time when they work overtime.
Are they earning time and a half or just?
Yes.
Yes.
The
They're
non-exempt
either-
staff are, yes.
Right, and we're just talking about non-exempt staff when I roll out the next few sentences. They're either earning to get paid overtime at time and a half, or they earn 1.5 hours for every hour of overtime worked. We allow people to accrue up to 80 hours of comp time, and then they can use it as they see fit. If they don't have big leave banks, whatever, it fills in gaps. But once they hit the 80 hours, then they have to be paid overtime. So by doing this, you're paying them out their overtime, which could have been paid out before. I mean, they've earned it, they could have been paid this out before. But now, this allows them to draw their bank potentially from 80 down to 40, which would give them leeway to earn more comp time if they desire. The downside is, let's say I'm hired at a grade 4 position and I earn, say, 60 hours of comp time that first year, and I don't touch it for years and years and years. Now I'm a grade 10. Now you're gonna be paying me out at my grade 10 salary versus my grade 4 salary. So that's the downside, and that's why there may be some other options brought forward in the future. But in the past several years, the commissioners have allowed this comp buyback time, and people have taken advantage of it.
Two questions. One is, I'm assuming that this is already in the budget. It's not because we've been paying these employees.
This is just in our overtime budget.
That's what I'm saying. So it's not, we don't have to screw.
We're not requesting money to pay it now.
Okay. So then what would be, and I guess we can't do this, but maybe moving forward, depending on what the options are, but saying that this amount of money, if you earn it at a grade 4 and you are now a grade 10, you get paid as a grade 4 because that's when you earn the money.
There's no way to track that. The way to really and truly implement that is to pay people overtime when they earn it, in the pay period that they earn it as a grade 4 employee base versus, 10, 20 years from now, depending on where they are in their salary range.
I've never worked anywhere where non-exempt staff were given the option of taking pay when they actually work the overtime or banking compensatory time. I've never seen it done. I've also never seen it done for exempt staff, but certainly not non-exempt staff. The idea of paying people when they actually perform the work for you has always been the standard any place I've been.
I would go along with anything moving forward, but for this issue, I look at it as employees, if they know it's in place, they may choose to hold on to this and sell it out now just before the holidays or something.
Yeah, and I think that's
And
what's happened, yeah.
I don't want to disrupt that. Now, if you want to make a change going forward, I'll listen. But my thing is, we should honor what we've done.
Oh, yeah, no, I absolutely agree with
Up to
you.
when we make this change.
No, I 100%
It
agree.
It may
This
not be
is
a
not the
good
time to
policy,
do that.
and we may change something.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't change it now.
No, and I agree with you. I don't think this is the time to do that, because I do think, we've had a couple of phone calls from staff, saying, hey, this always happens this time of year. Is it going to happen? And our answer was, it was coming forward to this body today.
Right.
Hearing what Ronnie has said and listening to the history of this, I think that I'd like to make a motion to approve the compensatory compensatory, that's right. Thank you, Tom. Leave buyback for county employees for a maximum of 40 hours to be paid on December 28th, 2023 paycheck.
I got a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. And if there's a better plan out there that makes better sense, I certainly would want to hear it. but I think we made the right decision.
Oh, yeah, I
Good.
think where we are today is
I do
is the
think that
correct
what
thing.
you said though, Jim, about paying people when they work has a lot of merit to it. And maybe, allow them to collect some comp time if they want, but maybe even put a little more restrictions on the number of hours.
I would agree, and I know Pat Merritt would agree with your statement, because when we get to the end of the fiscal year, this is a liability on our books. So whatever we have on the books as of June 30th, 2024, it's a higher liability, and just why? This is a very unique policy that we have here.
Yeah.
Sounds like we have a lot of unique.
We seem to. Next up is the teleworking policy.
Look, you've had enough time, Jim, I swear,
This is the
He can
HR
wear out his
agenda.
welcome.
yeah.
Oh, I think I did that about
A long time ago.
9 months ago. But hey,
Go ahead.
long as I'm here,
I'm
we'll keep
kidding.
rolling. Teleworking policy. There has been a telecommuting policy in place for some time. When I got here, one of the first conversations that Shelley and I had was a discussion about revamping that policy, looking at it somewhat differently. What we're proposing here is to basically eliminate the current telecommuting policy that's in the manual and replace it with teleworking as described here. And it wasn't just kind of amending language. We literally tore the whole thing down and rebuilt it. So that's why it looks as we're deleting one policy and creating a whole brand-new policy with different structure around it. Probably the two key items in this current policy is that teleworking is only permissible for 10% of the work period, so basically 1 day every 2 weeks is permissible based on the needs of the department and the approval of the department head. And there's also a caveat in there that once the employee and the department have come to an agreement that it's doable, that they seek at least review by HR and a discussion that way. And the reason why HR was built into this policy was to allow Human Resources, who is responsible for developing policy, administering policy, monitoring activity under policy, to have an opportunity to weigh in. I don't anticipate, to be honest, the departments are going to come to me with a policy that, or a proposal that's going to deviate from what the policy language is, or is going to be so outlandish as for me to say, this doesn't make any sense. But it gives us an opportunity to at least engage with the department director and the involved employee to talk about what's the benefit to the organization and secondarily to the employee to allow that person to telework a day every 2 weeks. That's the sum and substance of it.
And the previous policy was put into place prior to the pandemic. This is what we're calling telecommuting, the policy that's currently in the handbook. So this is something that's really needed to be massaged and rewritten, really, since the pandemic rewrote all of our expectations about options for working from home.
I have never been a big fan of teleworking. I do believe that it has some advantages from time to time. And I did read over the recommendation that you're putting forward. There are a couple of areas of concern for me. I do think that we need to limit it. It needs to be justified, and that we hire our department directors to run their different departments. They are the ones that know what works, what doesn't work, what they can do, what they can't do. And I understand why you may want some oversight.
We want to contribute to the process, yes.
And certainly they could always come to you and ask for some contribution. Also, don't want to burden our county administrator. And it's nice to have a go-between person, but to me, we are so small that the department heads, we hire them to do a job. We should allow them to make that decision on what's in the best interest of their particular department, and not and keep you informed, but not necessarily Jim, in my opinion. I don't know how the other two commissioners feel, but I feel like allow our department heads to make those decisions and to stay on top of it and make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. As you know, it only takes one bad apple to ruin it for everybody. And
We've spent a lot of time talking about eliminating teleworking altogether.
yes.
Because of.
That would be my actual preference, but I do see value to it when you have young families who may have a sick child that they have to stay at home because they can't go to childcare, or we have a snow day, or we have something that, they just can't get into the office. And I'm not even gonna mention the C word, COVID, or another pandemic. There's certainly value to it in those particular cases.
And we're really kind of talking about a small group of people, because obviously detention center guards,
Right.
those people, there's no such thing as teleworking. They're gotta be on the job, the paramedics and police officers, most county roads, none of those people are ever gonna be, this is probably somebody, there's gonna be a special exception made for a handful of people, maybe.
Yeah, there's administrative positions where it could work. We also, if you go to the last page of it, where we've included temporary or ad hoc arrangements, that really was what John was speaking to. That's not a permanent, that's not a structure where, say, for example, every other Friday, Jen wanted to work from home just because. It wouldn't be that. It would be Jen calls and Cade's sick and she can do her work from home and deal with a child. That's an ad hoc situation that would make sense.
And you as a
that I would
department should have that.
And I could do that, and that one's written as either the county administrator or her designee, probably me in most cases. But you're right, if it were up to me, you said it exactly the way I've said it for the last 10 months. I like to have managers manage. The problem, speaking frankly, that we've run into is that it wasn't being managed consistently from department to department, and it wasn't being managed in some cases consistently with what policy intended. So it caused problems where those inconsistencies were noticeable from department to department. We're trying to put structure around a policy that got way out of whack a long time ago.
Well, wouldn't it be better to train the directors in what is expected on the teleworking? Clean up the policy. It probably definitely needs to be cleaned up. But bring the directors in at your staff meetings and do a little presentation. This is the new policy. This is what you're expected to make sure your people are doing. And not put
Yes.
a extra set of hands in it unless you're needed for guidance or.
And I think that's really what it's going to be more than anything else. Certainly the policy is going to, if you all approve the policy, it's going to be disseminated to leadership and from there. But I think this also gives the directors who maybe haven't had to manage it or have the experience of doing it a resource like me, who has managed and collaborated with department directors on teleworking policies for the last 2 decades, and
But that's all right.
knows a
Why
bit
you should be
about it.
Part of the training.
Yeah, and once the leadership
And
is,
that's a one and done
yeah, once the
thing.
leadership is in place and it's manageable and managed well and consistently, I can step away from that. I can find something else to do.
I think
that's a
the
one and
simplest
done.
thing would be to, as far as teleworking, you leave it up that it probably should say would be controlled by the department head with an emphasis on less is better.
Less is better, and at the same time,
They gotta have a good
Keep it
reason when you
keep
do
it
it,
new.
be
That's where
prepared
we
to
went.
justify why it's being done.
And that's why it was written as
But-
8 hours out of every 80.
It's not something that we're all fans of, but we know in certain times it's necessary. And leave it up to the department heads, but an emphasis on the less is better.
And maybe we have a general intent paragraph added, and then have something in there, as the commissioners have said, that the decision is the department head's decision.
But like I say, it's not a lot of people that's gonna be involved in this
Consistent with
to
the
start
policy.
with.
The department head has to, the department head would make the decision, but the department's head's decision has to be consistent with this policy. And I think that's something that the county administrator and/or the personnel director would have to review from time to time to see if there's a department head that is granting excessive amounts of telework and not meeting this policy. I think that's gonna be something that Shelley and Jim are gonna have to sort out and review with the department head.
I was not an advocate of eliminating the option of teleworking. I see a lot of value in it.
I do too,
But
within reason.
right, this allows the department head latitude to basically implement it up to a degree. And then, other than that, ad hoc situations would also be allowed. And I think this gives the same structure countywide, so that everybody's playing by the same rules. I mean, obviously, correctional officers can't work from home, MEOs can't work from home, but
Probably 80% of our workforce can't work from home.
And probably don't want to.
No,
But no, I don't want to work at home.
no, I like getting away.
I like the
Was
idea.
it
of
that you
being
didn't want to work from
consistent.
home, or, never mind.
Let that one go, Jim.
We'll go there, yeah.
So I think we should maybe table this and clean it up a little bit.
We can modify the language a little bit. If you notice, it does say if the employee and supervisor agree and human resources concurs, teleworking can commence.
Yeah, I don't think
It doesn't say
It's
that
not-
I have the final
it's not
say
something
in
you
the
need to worry
thing.
about, unless there's a problem.
Yeah,
Then it becomes your,
yeah, and of course, to know if there's a problem or not means that me or Shelley or somebody that Shelley designates, again, likely me, is gonna have to monitor the amount of teleworking that's going on, pay period by pay period, to identify if things aren't going correctly. If we get out in front of it, if I can talk about it on the front end, then I don't have to do the same kind of monitoring on the back end.
I honestly think if there's a situation where it gets out of hand, everybody will be aware of it. You'll know it.
Okay.
But,
We can tweak the language to take HR's
but that
advise and concurrence out of it and move from there.
That part
That's all
about
it's any
putting an
language
emphasis
different.
on less is better, that's an indication that we're not fans of it to start with, but when it needed to be done, we understand. That's pretty clear to me.
Sure.
All right?
Sure. We'll make, a small modification to the language. As I say, the only part that seems to be the sticking point is HR having advise and concurrence.
I'm trying to look after you. I don't want you burdened.
Oh, why didn't you say that before
And
we started talking about
I
retiree
want our
health
department
insurance?
heads to lead and manage and supervise. And speaking of that, a little while ago, I had mentioned that there was some leadership training that might come available. Has there been any movement with that organization wanting to talk to us about that?
No.
I'll follow up on that, because I think that would be a very good thing for our
absolutely.
managers here in the county. There is one other policy that I would like for you to take a look at some point. It has to do with the sick leave bank.
Yeah, we tabled that one. We were going to talk about that one at this meeting, but we had some more changes that we felt we needed to make to it. We did bring forth annual leave as a discussion point, however.
I saw that. But what I have here is a copy of the Queen Anne's County policy. And after reading through it and looking at our policy, there's pretty significant differences in the, two policies. I don't think any of us in this room are, if you have someone abusing sick leave, that's a whole different situation. But you have someone who has a family health issue or a personal issue that needs time. And you have fellow employees who want to help with maybe donating some of their sick leave to that particular employee. Maybe they work in the same office, maybe they don't. Any of us could be in that situation at any given time. Hopefully not, but we do have a case here in the county that sick leave has been exhausted, and it's a justified reason. Family's got to come first. And this is a valued employee, and I would like to see us take a look at what Queen Anne's does and maybe consider, if not all, but some of their policy. And today's not really the day to get into it, but I'd like to give this to you, Jim, if I
Yeah,
could.
I'll be happy to take it. I mean, we obviously
for you
already
to look
have a
at.
donation policy, but I'll tell you, I've worked with donation policies in the past, and they are problematic because they become personality contests.
We do, don't we have one?
We do.
We do.
Because I can remember people being able to borrow from.
We have to have it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
very,
we
very
do,
restrictive.
and we actually started looking at it as we were looking at what we're going to talk about on annual leave in a second. But I have seen terrible inconsistencies in donation programs that make me nervous, that turn into personality contests. And I work in the same department, but I'm not as liked as other people. Nobody donates to me, somebody else gets a ton of donation. And is that really what the intent is supposed to be? Anyway, to your point, John, we can, absolutely, I'll review
Yeah,
what Queen Anne's is
Let's talk
doing.
about
We'll go
it
from,
after you've had a chance to look.
Yeah.
We're,
happy to do that.
we don't need to
Yeah,
get in the middle
happy
of this
to.
now, but
We also, there is also, and I think the situation you were describing, John, I think I'm familiar. There are eligibility requirements that particular individual doesn't satisfy. Creates a whole different set of
understand all that.
problems for us. Annual leave for a second. Fundamentally, the only difference here is when employees have access to it. Right now, as a new person comes on board, they start to accrue time, but they can't access anything that they've accrued until they've been with us for 6 months. What we're finding in recruiting is that that's challenging. Depending on what time of year you're hiring somebody, you hire somebody in May and they've already planned a summer vacation, they've booked it, they've paid for it. Can they afford to go on that vacation and have leave without pay? It's a strain and it's a burden. This time of year, we hire somebody now and they've planned a few days off at Christmas time with their family. It's going to be leave without pay. What we thought about and what we thought could be productive, particularly on the recruitment side, is to give employees access to whatever they've accrued as they accrue it. The expense is nominal because people are going to accrue a few hours per pay period. So the county's not on the hook for a terrible amount of money, but it lessens some of the burden on new employees that they know if, I've only been there 2 weeks and I get a cold and I should stay home because I shouldn't infect anybody else, but I can't afford to stay home because I can't afford to lose a day's pay. With this, and we were intending to include sick leave in this, but we had other changes to talk about in sick leave, that would give that person a little bit of cushion where they might be able to cover that day out and still get paid for it. It's a positive employee relations item. It's nominally expensive. I looked at the hires and terminates that we had voluntary terminations over the last 12 months, October of last year, October of this year. And of those 14 who left us, I think we ended up with 3 people who left in less than 6 months. those are the only three people that would have that would have accessed this time anyway. It wouldn't cost the county much, but what I think it would do in terms of positive employee relations and as a recruitment tool be positive items. That's why we're bringing it forth to you.
Because I've heard in the years past, somebody, you're interviewing me or something, and I say, well, I'd love to take the job, but I got to make you aware of the fact that my wife and I have planned a vacation in 3 weeks.
Yes.
What do we do about that? You certainly don't want to lose a person over that.
Yeah.
And if you can work it out where you could pay them for that, but make sure it's they don't get credit for that leave as you go forward until that's covered or something.
Yeah, I don't believe our payroll system allows us to advance time quite that way, which is why we were talking about giving people access to their time when they started and as they accrued it. A different payroll system might allow you to advance time and then deduct it back. I don't believe our current system.
But that's
is
not
so
unusual for
sophisticated.
that to come up when you hire somebody and they say, well, yeah, thanks for the job. I've got to let you know up front that we planned on being somewheres or doing something.
That conversation
That
happens all the
All
time.
the time, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
We often have to advise them it'll be legal.
So it would be nice if we come up with some way of dealing with
Yeah,
that.
so I think a step in the direction would be to give them access to their accrued annual leave and accrued sick leave from day one. That at least gives them a little bit of a cushion. We also know that
And that
people
would include
accrue
personal days, too?
days, but they can't access those for, I think, the first 90 days either. Or is it 6 months for personals? They can't access that either. What we hope to come forward with, maybe next meeting, maybe the one after that, is actually an idea of merging annual leave and personal days into what's called PTO, or paid time off, and having it accessible immediately for both of those categories to even further help new employees bridge that gap when they have things that come up, and things always come up. I had a vacation planned, or I got a cold, or, pick one. Where I used to work, we had somebody we hired for a leadership position who was in an accident and broke his leg, like his second week with us. Under our policy, we could help bridge some of that gap. Otherwise, this person would have been out of work for a month on no pay and trying to deal with a new job, and a health insurance expense. And when you don't have a paycheck, you've got to pay for the health insurance out of your own pocket and all those, cascading kind of issues. This would be a step in the direction, and I think a step in the direction of considering annual leave and personal time as a paid time off category. So we would have that and sick leave, but that's future state for us. Right now, it's if we can give people a little latitude by letting them access their annual leave at point of hire, whatever they've accrued at that point, and for the first several months, that eases a little bit of the burden. That's what we're asking for today.
Albert, do you have any questions?
No, sir.
I think after hearing Commissioner Fithian and personally witnessing exactly what you've indicated in your presentation, I'd like to make a motion to move the annual leave policy change resolution and approve it as presented.
Got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, the ayes have it.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think,
Not another word.
I think I'm back at a
No, you're
closed
done.
session, I think.
Jim, you're done. Your time's up.
Well, you're not the first person to tell me that, sir. You're not even the second person. to tell
County
me that.
Administrator, we're moving forward here.
I've got a really easy one
Dan,
before.
before you go, one quick question. I don't know whether I'm just bringing it to everybody's attention. Turner's Creek has been kicked down the road, kicked down the road, kicked down the road. We got to get an answer what we're going to do with that building. Either that group has got a way of solving it, or we're going to get rid of it.
So they reached out to me about 2 weeks ago asking, or maybe it was last week, asking when the upcoming meetings are. I told them, and I've also indicated that we need to have the documentation prior to the meeting, but in accordance with our deadlines. And they did not reach back out for this meeting, so they have about another day to reach out for the 19th.
Okay.
So hopefully they'll come forward.
Now, I think when John and I were up to Millington one night there with it, Jeremy that comes in here, he had some things going, so I'm not diminishing that, we need to hear it.
I agree, because at this point, the demo bid has expired, so we're gonna have to
Yeah.
if they're not willing to honor the
We
demo.
got to figure out what we're
We'd
gonna
have to
do with it.
rebid
I don't
that,
want to leave
yeah.
it sitting there. But I didn't know, I just wanted you to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Shelley?
Okay, I would like to take just about 30 seconds and say thank you to Miss Sharon Price for the beautiful wreath on the front door. I think she deserves credit for that stunning work of art, and it certainly dresses up the front of our building. So if somebody here could pass that along to her, I would be much obliged.
And every year,
You need to add a little more to what you just said, under the supervision of her husband.
Oh, silly me for omitting that part.
She, no, actually, she likes doing that, and she does a good job. with it.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
So on your way out today, if you want to look at the front door, you're gonna see.
What about that big wreath that goes on the front of the courthouse? Is that, that used to come, Mr.
Terry.
Miss Terry
Walter
Batchelor.
Harris where'd all that go?
Well, Terry Batchelor was the one who.
Yeah, but somebody after even Terry's death, I thought Walter Harris's granddaughter or daughter.
There was like a twig wreath that we used to put up there at Christmas time after that one stopped being donated, but then we put the seal up there when we renamed the courthouse. And we stopped.
And
The
that's,
wreath, and the Dickens people decorate all around the courthouse anyway.
Okay.
yeah, and I guess.
I'm just curious where all that went.
Right.
No one's sure that the boards up there will hold any more weight, so.
And you don't want
You
to
can see through it.
put anything on top of the seal.
I ain't
either.
asking him. I see him getting a little fidgety back here. I didn't know.
He's used to sitting all day.
All right.
Okay, so my first item is
And
extremely
we
easy.
we all agree that we should send a little notice or thank you letter to Mrs. Price
Sounds good.
and her helpers,
And however,
whoever that.
in whatever capacity that may be. So the Historical Society of Kent County has requested a letter of support for a grant application, and this will be going to the Stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area. Their proposal is to develop exhibits regarding the history of Rock Hall, Still Pond, and Galena. And this should be of great interest to all of our residents to preserve some of these artifacts. So that is just a request for a letter of support.
I'll make a motion that we approve the draft letter and provide the letter of support.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay, and then I have two items that are public service announcements. First, we've already discussed, and I think beaten quite well at this point, is a work session scheduled for Tuesday, December 19th, 2023, 3 p.m., and this is specifically for the retirees to discuss reimbursement of their health care expenditures. And the second is 3 o'clock next Tuesday, 3 o'clock this Tuesday, sorry.
Today, it's today, right?
Yes, there's, in the Second Judicial Circuit Court of Maryland, there's a dedication of plaques, and 2 or more of the commissioners may be in attendance.
Okay?
Okay.
One of them better be there.
It's 3 o'clock today.
Correct.
I will be there too as well.
So, and we've been discussing the lobby expansion, so that's a good opportunity to take a look at the lobby.
I'm almost, where the judge is talking about the boards, I'm scared to almost walk in there today.
You can take those steel beams from Turner's Creek.
Yeah, right, hold her up. Do the same thing we did to the granary up Turner's Creek, we'll put them middle beams in there and hold the roof.
Get the Amish contractor in there.
This, I guess we're now down to, public comment. John, you are okay? Then I need,
I'm surprised Jim Miller didn't have something to say.
Ouch!
Yeah, as soon as I open my mouth.
then I need, go into closed session.
I'll make a motion that we go into closed session under the Annotated Code of Maryland, General Provisions, Article 3-305, little b, 1, to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, and any other personal matter that affects one or more specific individuals.
Motion is second, all in